Everyone, I'm CS Sukunshi, Indirect Tax Expert at ClearTax, and today we all gathered here to understand about the GST notices which is being issued. So we are going to discuss about like why that notices are even being issued and what are the consequences, how we can solve that, and how we can make sure that we don't receive such kind of notices. So we are going to discuss about all this, but before that, I just want to check if you all are able to hear me or not. So if you are able to hear me, just say hi on the chat box. Great. So it seems like everyone is able to hear me. So with this, we'll just start our today's session, which is on the saga of 50K GST notices slapped on businesses. So we all know that recently there were a lot of notices which was being issued to a lot of taxpayers. So let's understand about that why these notices were even issued, how the government is even defining that to whom they're going to even issue the notice, what are the main criteria behind issuing such notices, and we'll also understand like what to do in case this issue the notices are being issued to us. So here the top reason why company has been regularly getting this notices, what are the examples, some of the use cases, how to respond to these notices, how to ensure you don't receive these notices in especially at least in this regard, and how can clear help you in avoiding such notices. So let's first understand about what is the notice under GST. See, we always have like a fear of, okay, I got the notice, what exactly I should do? Or, oh God, there's a very huge demand, what should I do? But maybe there can always be certain scenario where you will be like, okay, there is a notice, but I don't have to even have a fear of this. See, when it comes to fear, we actually do a lot of mistakes in that case. So it's always one important part which we should keep in our mind is notice is just a form of communication by the tax department. It's just a communication where the department says or the authority says that hey, you have not followed this, I could see that there is certain discrepancies, tell me why there is a discrepancy. It's not like that if someone is issuing you the notice of let's say 10 lakh rupees, then you have to pay that 10 lakh. There can always be a cases that it was a genuine mistake. I will give you few of the examples also. Many times you would have noticed that maybe while I was filing my GST1, there I have reported the sale of let's say instead of 1 crore, I have just added one extra zero over there, and that resulted in the huge differences. Now, when I actually filed my 3B, I paid the correct liability in my GST 3B. But this resulted in a difference between GST 1 and 3B. And when this resulted into the difference in GST 1 and 3B, the department actually have issued the notice to me saying I could clearly notice that from this particular thing you have a differences. Now tell me, this is a liability as per me. Why should you not pay that? Right. So here we should not be afraid of that notice. We should actually understand. Okay, there is a discrepancy. The best way is that if you have done some mistake, right? If in the GST1 itself you know that okay, I have wrongly filed my GST1, though in 3B I have corrected my liability and correctly paid the taxes, in the next month itself you should have amended the GST1 form itself. So that particular invoices which resulted into that mistake, you can always amend that particular part, right? That's the correct way, because whenever we receive the notice, obviously there would be some time period, so there would be some chance which will be given to you to make the corresponding amendments and all, and accordingly you can always reply to the department. So that's the best way. But you should obviously know that there is such thing happen, so you should know when exactly the department actually raises the notice, so that at least that part you can solve one time, right? So here, if you ask me what is notice, it's just a communication which is done by the GST authority to the taxpayer. So that's like a kind of communication. There they may say that hey, and why would they even say? Why would they even issue the notice? There can be a case where the department feels that you should get registered. Your turnover is actually above the threshold limit, but you have not registered, right? Or maybe you have such kind of a businesses where you are mandatory required to get registered, but still you are not registered, right? So they may issue you the notice telling that you are required to register, but you have not registered. There can be cases when you are registered, but there was a discrepancy between the GST1 and GST3B. So because this both the forms you are only filing it in GST1, you show all of your outward supplies, and GST3B you actually go ahead and pay this liability. So here in both the places, right, you provide the same set of the information. So basis that the department may say, hey, there is a discrepancy here, so you should tell me why there is a discrepancy, and accordingly they may decide whether there is a liability you have to pay or not along with the interest. The other case could be that there's a difference between the ITC. There's a difference between the GSTR 2B and GSTR 3B. That's the main reason that the department will raise the notice. And again, here you would have a lot of queries in your mind that, okay, is it 2B, is it 2A? What about 17, 18, 18, 19? What about the cases where there was a government have given us the provisional basis thing, the 5%, 20%, 10%, which we used to have in the previous year? What about that? Like, how are we going to follow this? And is it like in 2B, I know there's a discrepancy between 2B and 3B, but for how much return period department is even going to look into that? So we'll discuss about all of this thing. Then there can be cases where there's a delay in filing your GST 1 and GST 3B. Then also the government, they always have the right, that they will issue you the notice that why you're not filed GST 1 and GST 3B. Most of the time, they actually suspend your GST number itself. So they will also again raise a notice that why your GST 1 and 3B is not filed. Whenever they see some inconsistency between the GST 1, because again, when we look into GST1, we report all of our outward supply. So whenever they see inconsistency between what is coming in GST1 and what is coming in the e-way bill, right? Because e-way bill you again create whenever you're supplying or moving the goods from one place to another. There also again the department may come up and just raise a notice to you. But obviously there would be genuine cases when there is a differences. So we'll understand about like how exactly to reply, what exactly to do in such scenarios. But this is also one another common reason for the GST notices. Similarly, there can be a case where there's a non-payment of GST liability or there's a short payment of the liability. So in that particular case, again, department can look into the forms and accordingly tell that there's a short payment, you were liable to pay, you have not paid it. And many times from the upfront, if you look into GST one itself, right, there can be cases that maybe you have reported one invoice which is dated for April, but you have uploaded that particular invoice in the month of different month. Let's say instead of April, you uploaded this invoice in the month of May, right? So from the form itself, we would know there's a discrepancy. Then the department may again say, oh, there is a difference here, you have to pay interest, but still you have not paid interest. In such case, again, right, we will get the notice and we have to pay the interest there. There can be cases of GST refunds where the wrong GST refund was given by the department. So in that case, again, they may ask that the refund was wrongly made, or then in that case, again, they will just ask that, okay, there was a wrong refund given, you have to give that money back. There can be cases where the ITC was wrongly availed or claimed. In that case, again, there would be another problem. Then, if you fail to register, you are liable to get registered under GST, but you actually fail to get registered yourself. Then again, there are chances that you will receive the notice. And if there is an inconsistency in reporting the export in GST1 and with what is coming in the ICE gate, again, the next reason you may get notice. And there can also be a conduct of audit by the tax authority. So this was the main reason that why you may get the notices. And also we know that there was an SOP which has already been issued, where the department himself is saying that, hey, I'm going to follow all this, and if I see certain discrepancies in the returns and all, I'm going to raise the notice. We'll also understand about that SOP, that what exactly was that SOP, right? So but this was the main common reason that you actually get this GST notices. Now the question is that we know recently there was a new notification which was issued, right? And in that particular notification, there is a new rule which has been introduced, which is rule number 88C. Let's understand about this rule 88C, because this is really very important for all of us to understand that what is that rule and what how is this going to impact me. So now I will give you some practical scenarios, and maybe you will be able to relate this, and you yourself can tell me if that is the case in which you fall or not, right? So here what exactly department is saying that, see, you file your GST1, you also file your GST3B. Both are the return you file on a monthly basis or maybe quarterly basis if you have opted for the QRMP scheme. But again, in quarterly basis, you may also file IFF, right? So the department says that I already have the information in respect of your outward supply in your GST1, and the same information is also shown in your GST3B, where you actually go ahead and make the payment, right? So when the department already have the information in respect of GSTR1 where you report outward supply, and they also have the information in GSTR3B where you actually go and discharge your liability by either utilizing the ITC or maybe making the payment in cash, right? There you also add some more informations like if there is some liability you have to pay under the inward supply liable to ASIN. So you also show that information, but majorly when we focus only on outward supply, this information is present with the government. Now the main question comes in, right? When the department is going to issue you the notice, when the department notice that there is a GSTR1 which is filed for a particular tax period, there is a GSTR 3B also filed for the particular tax period, and your liability which is showing in GSTR 1 was more as compared to the liability which is shown in GSTR 3B, then the department will raise you the notice, because there the department says that okay, you reported more liability but you have not paid the taxes to me. So here you are liable to pay the taxes, you should give me the taxes. This is very apparent from the form itself. They don't have to do anything at all. So for that, they have introduced this rule number 88C, and they are saying now that this is also not like going to be done by the tax authority. This will be directly done by the portal itself. So in the GSTN portal, if you would have seen, they're already generating such kind of report where they show what is the difference between GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B. So they already generate such report, and if there is such discrepancies between the 1 and 3B, and obviously in this case the liability in 1 is more and the liability in 3B is less, and if they see such scenario, they are going to issue you the notice, and the form name over here is DRC01B. So what they're saying, if there's a discrepancy 1 and 3B, one liability is more than the liability which is shown in 3B. In that particular case, there is a part A of DRC01B which they are going to issue, and there they will tell that for this particular return period, as per GST1, this is the liability, as per 3B, this is the liability, this is the difference, you have to pay this difference along with the interest. That is what they are going to do. So this is what they have, and this is going to be electronically generated, which means the portal itself will generate. You will see this notice is coming and reflecting in your portal. You have to look into this, and then accordingly you have to decide that whatever the department is saying, is it correct or not. If you feel that yes, there is an actual mistake, that one was correct, my GST1 I have correctly filed, but in 3B I have not paid correct taxes. If it's a genuine mistake, you know that yes, I have paid less amount to the government, you should make the payment of that particular liability using your form DRC03. So you have to make the payment to the government and reply, yes, I have now made the payment. So I'm done with that. But most of the time what happened, we actually had made, it's not a mistake, but it's a more of a case. I will give you one few examples, right? There was a case that, let's say in GST1, for a particular return period, you have shown some invoices. Let's say the liability for that invoice was 1 lakh rupees, and you showed some credit note also, and the liability of that credit note was 20,000. So as per your GST1, the net liability was 80,000 in this example. Then you file your GSTR 3B also. When you were trying to file your GSTR 3B, because there was certain credit note, the credit note which was issued was in respect of some interstate supply, and this was in respect of some of the state where I didn't have the invoices in that particular month. Right, so I had raised some credit note to some unregistered person, because let's say I'm supplying to an e-commerce operator. I got some supplies in the previous month, I had sold something, but in this particular month I have raised a credit note, and in this month I don't have any sale in that particular state, right? So I was not able to adjust the credit note in my GST 3B in that return period. So what happened? April month, shown a liability of 80,000 in my GST1. I showed 1 lakh ka invoices. I showed 20,000 ka credit note. So net 80,000 liability was there in my GST1. There was no problem. When I was trying to file my GST 3B, I was able to adjust the 10,000 credit note, but 10,000, the remaining 10,000, I was not able to adjust because I don't have any invoices in that particular state. And as we know, in table number 3.1 in GST 3B, I have to show the breakdown, and the government don't allow the negative figures. So I was not able to adjust the 10,000 credit note. So I was able to show my entire liability of 90,000. So what I have done, I have shown the liability of 90,000 in my GSTR 3B, and I have discharged the liability also to the government. I have paid the remaining amount, whatever I have to pay to the government after adjusting the ITC. In this particular month, when I was filing for the month of April, GST 1 was correct. There was no problem. GST 1, 80,000 liability. 3B also, it's not correct, but because government don't allow us to put the negative figure, so I have paid the liability of 90,000. Anyhow, I have paid extra money to the government. I paid 10,000 extra to the government. So in this case, obviously, I'm not going to get any notices. Right? Why I would not get any notices? Because I paid extra. In case I have not paid extra, I have paid less, then the department is going to issue the notice. Right? There was no problem. Everything was sorted. Now what happened? My other months was going very smoothly. May month I had some liability. I showed in GST 1. I paid the liability in my GST 3B by declaring the same amount. There was no problem. After 5-6 months, let's say in the month of November, I finally got some sales in the particular state where earlier I had raised the credit note. Right now, in the month of November, this actually happened that I finally have issued some invoices in that particular state for which I had the credit note. Right. So what I have done in GST 1, I would have shown the correct liability, I would have shown the correct invoices, I would have shown the correct credit notes also. There was no problem. Let's say the net amount was coming as 90,000. Right now, when I actually filed my GST 3B, the net amount was 90,000, but I know there was some unadjusted credit note of my April month of 10,000, which I can adjust now because now I have the invoices in that particular state. So now what I would do, I would adjust a 10,000 amount in my November return, which is in November GST 3B. So when I now adjust that 10,000 rupees in my November month, the liability which is shown in my GST 3B will become 80,000 because I have to adjust that April month ka liability. So here, if you just see, when the department looks into the November return period, they will see, okay, in my GSTR 1, the liability shown is 90,000, but when I look into my GSTR 3B, the liability shown is 80,000, which means I have paid less amount, and they may see such discrepancy and they may issue the notice to you. Though most of the time they will see if there's a very huge amount, then only they are going to raise a notice, but they may always raise a notice because they will see a discrepancy over here. Though when I look at a cumulative level, there is no discrepancy. Right, if I do at a cumulative level, there is no problem, but if I don't do that cumulative level, I may get a notice. And most of the time you may get a notice because assume this was a case of March month. Right, if this, instead of April, I'm saying it is March month, and here let's say I'm adjusting something in October month, then in that case, because it's a previous month, right, so many times people, when they do the cumulative, they may see differences and they don't look into the opening differences. So you may get the notice. So for such cases, because I'm not liable to pay any taxes to the government, then the government says don't worry about that. You will get the communication from the department, you will get a notice from the department in the form DRC 01B. But here we give you, so either, so this is the format how you're going to get this notice in DRC 01B, where I will tell you that, okay, from the return period this to this much, this is the difference, and this is the detail of this. So in GST 1 or IFF, this is the information which was given. GST 3B, this was the liability, and this is the difference in liability which you are liable to pay. So one way you had was you made the payment in DRC 03 and informed to the department in part B. That is the one way of replying to this notice. And again, this reply, whatever the reply you're going to make, you have to do online on the GST portal itself. So there itself you have to reply. You don't have to reply offline. So that is the one way where that was a genuine mistake which was done by you, and you know that you have to discharge that liability, you have to pay that. But where you know that no, this was not a mistake. Actually, the problem over here was that yes, this was a case where, let's say, there was a credit note which I have adjusted at a later stage. So here the government says that here in part B, you can even reply in this way. When I'm saying even reply in this way, so here they are telling some of the reasons which department themselves know that some of the reason could be because of this, that you have certain discrepancy, so you can reply it over here. So there can be a reason that there was an extra liability paid in earlier tax period in form GSTR 3B, where you have paid some extra liability earlier. In that particular case, you can tell that yes, you have already paid the liability, right? Or there can be case that some transition of earlier tax period which could not be declared in GSTR 1 of the set tax period, but in respect of which the tax has already been paid in GSTR 3B, and now you are declaring that in GSTR 1. So that could be the another reason. So the example which I gave you, right, where I was not able to adjust the credit note, falls in the first category itself, right? Because here I have paid extra to the government. So now what I'm going to do, I will tell under the one point itself, I will tell the government that, hey, government, in GST 3B, right? So when I look into my GST 3B, if you just notice that in my 1 and 3B, there was also discrepancy for the month of April amounting to this much amount. And this was a difference. This difference I have adjusted in this particular month. So you have to give the proper reply to the government under this category. And this details which we give over here is a mandatory information. We have to give it properly that in this month, this was the differences and this has been adjusted in this month. So there is no liability. I don't have to pay any liability to you, and there is no question of interest because anyhow I have paid extra amount in the month of April itself. Right. So then they can also be. So this was one example where I said there was an unadjusted credit note. There can always be a case that maybe you had paid earlier in GST 1, you forgot to report some liability, but GST 3B you had correctly paid. You realized your mistake maybe after 2-3 months, and now after realizing your mistake, you know, okay, there was a discrepancy in my GST 1. I have underreported something in GST 1, and now you have reported that information in GST 1. So when now you have reported this information in GST 1, obviously, since you have paid a correct liability in GST 3B of the previous month, so in 3B you will always show the correct amount, right? Then also you will see a difference in a particular month, but when you look into the cumulative level, there is no difference. But department, when they look into some of the month and they see certain discrepancy, they may always raise a notice to you. What exactly you have to do in this example, if you see the second category, here, what the government says, when there is a transition of the earlier tax period, which could not be declared in GST 1, and now you have actually declared that due to which there is a discrepancy, you have to report it over here and give a proper information. So you have to give a proper information. This was a discrepancy in this return period. This was a discrepancy. This was the invoice detail due to which this discrepancy have occurred. And now this has been adjusted in this month in which this much is the difference. So ultimately, I have no differences at all, right? So that is what you can always show. Similarly, there can also be a cases in GST 1, I had shown something, but I would have amended something, right? Let's say in GST 1, there was a liability of actual 1 lakh rupees, right? And but I reported only 80,000. Right? There was a liability of 1 lakh. I reported 80,000, but I have paid the correct taxes at, right? So when I paid the taxes, I paid the correct taxes of 1 lakh rupees. So I would have amended that in the next month. So whenever I amended, that resulted in the different liability. So here again, we may have certain discrepancy. So the department say it's okay if you have a discrepancy, you tell me in which particular month you have corrected it. So here you can always show similarly table number 4 also, if there's a mistake in reporting any information in GST 1, you have to tell it over there. And if there could be any other reasons also, right? Sometimes there could be some, maybe I have made some mistake while I was giving some information, right? So there, if there's some any other reason, you have to tell, and you have to tell properly that in which return period there was a problem where you have actually paid the taxes. All of that information has to be clearly mentioned so that they can nullify your demand. So whatever they're asking as that this is your liability or this is your interest, they can just nullify after you give a proper reply. So on the portal itself, on the GST portal itself, you have to give a proper reply that yes, I know there's a difference. This is the reason of the differences. So ultimately, I have no liability, and ultimately they may close this case, right? So this is now automated. Now there won't be any manual intervention. It's not like the tax officer is going to issue the notice. Rather, this will be the system generated notice. So in DRC 01B, here this is a system generated. They will see there's a discrepancy. They will issue you the notice, and you have to accordingly reply online within 7 days. So within the 7 days of receiving this notice, you should reply online with a proper thing. If there's a genuine where actually you had to pay something paid through DRC 03, or you may always give a reason that why there's a differences, and accordingly the department may come up and close the case. So this was a recent amendment which had happened. So if you just see, this is a recent notification which was issued, and this is how you have to reply on the portal itself. Similarly, see, if you would have seen that we have heard lot of thing about getting like 50K notices being issued to the taxpayers, right, for 17, 18, 18, 19. We all know that there's a very limited time left for issuing the notices for 17, 18, and 18, 19. So the department have actually started raising the notices, and there are a lot of notices which has been issued. One very example, right? There was an Indian online gaming giant where they had issued a notice of 21,000 crore. And why they have issued the notices? Because they feel that the invoices were some backdated, or the GST rates which was applied was inaccurate. So this is one of the reasons they say you should pay the interest and all. So that's a very different case. But this was one of the another reason when the department actually have raised the notice. But now question is, okay, one is how can I avoid the notices so that I don't even get a notice? I don't want to receive any notice. Second is, I got the notices, but am I ready to reply to the department? Because I should not be in a situation that, okay, once I receive, or I will wait for the department to issue the notice and then start making the reply or documenting the things, right? So there are two important parts which we should always understand. Now, let me talk about few of the practical scenario where you can't even avoid the notices, right? There will always be cases where you can't avoid the notices, and at the same time few cases where you can always avoid the notices, so you will never be receiving the notices in some scenario. So here, whenever I'm talking about all this, and then we'll discuss about if you receive the notice, how you're going to reply to the notice, right? So first case, if we think about how the GST journey is changing, if we talk about 2017, how the GST came into picture, then how they have come up with this e-way bill, then they have come up with the e-invoicing, right? So then even if after that, if we look into it, earlier they used to be two-way, then they come up with a 2B, which is more of a freezing thing. So there were a lot of changes which happened in GST. There was a lot of notification which we keep on seeing. Many times as a rate change, sometimes the rate was 18%, now they have made it 12%. Sometimes the rate was, let's say, the vice versa. Let's say earlier the rate was 12%, now it has become 28%. So there are a lot of changes which is happening. And not only this, even if we look into the form itself, right? In GST1, earlier the HSN was optional, but now the HSN is mandatory. We have already filed, I think, GST 9 by this 31st December, right? So earlier the HSN summary itself was optional, but now I have to give the detail. So is this all going to impact me? Am I going to get the notices basis that? The answer is yes. When you look into GST 9 also, right? How the information was populated in GST 9 and again 9C, that also becomes one of the source for the government to check that what information was correct, raise a discrepancy, and accordingly raise the notice to you. So let's understand some few cases where you may always get the notice, but you should be ready with the reply. Let me take few examples. One example, we say, okay, whenever there's a discrepancy between GST1 and GST3, it's an automated reply, you will get it. Okay. Most of the time, you will not have a difference between GST1 and GST3B, right? Because if we look into 3B also, all the information gets populated from GST1, so you will not be receiving, or you will not have any differences. But there can also be scenarios like I gave you an example of unadjusted credit note, or there was a mistake which happened while you were filing GST1 because of the huge data or a huge transaction. So there can be genuine cases. If there are such cases, whenever you make a mistake of GST1 and GST3B filing, you know these are reasons. Try to make the correction in the immediate month, the next immediate month. If let's say I gave an example, GST1 may I have wrongly reported some liability, right? Make the correction the next month itself, right? So whenever you do that, because the department also, whenever they raise the notice, they look into at least 3-4 months. It's not like in this month you have made a mistake, next month you're receiving the notice. That's not going to happen. They will take some time. They will give you some time for the correction. After that only they are going to raise you the notice, right? So if that's the case, try to always make the correction in the next month itself. So the best way is always look into your 1 and 3B before filing. So we know that the 3B is the form or the return which you always file after GST1. Always look into the cumulative thing before filing your GST1. So there are two important factors you should always keep in your mind while you're filing your GST1 and GST3B. Whenever you're filing GST1, always look into your cumulative 1 versus 3B report, or maybe I would say not 1 versus 3B, but 1 versus 3B versus books report, and see there is no difference. If there is no difference, which means everything was great, you can go ahead, prepare your GSTF1 for the current month and file it. Similarly, when you're filing your GSTR 3B, always look into the cumulative report plus the liability which is coming in my current month GSTR 1, and just see. Before filing 3B itself, you see that there is nothing which is left over. If there is some adjustment, make the adjustment that time itself so that that discrepancy goes away. And you should not wait for your GSTR 9 to happen and then do all these adjustments or all this reconciliation. So, this is the first important thing which we should keep in mind while you are filing your 1 and 3B. Right. Now the second important point. Second important. So here, if you just see, if you do this right, I can promise that you are not going to get the notice at all, especially for this reason, because you would have already adjusted. Huh, there can always be case that you may say, okay, I was not able to adjust my credit note. What to do in this cases? If that's the cases, you may get a notice, but always document that. Wherever you're documenting everything, document all of these things so that when you receive the notice, at that time you're not going to prepare the reply. Rather, you already know that this was a liability, I know there's a difference and this has been adjusted in this month, and you can just paste it over there itself and you're done. You don't have to collect the data at the time you're receiving the notices, right? So this is one part. Now the second part is where you're going to definitely get the notices, the differences between your GSTR 2B and the difference between your GSTR 3B, right? You may always say that, okay, it's a very normal thing to have a difference between your 2B and GSTR 3B. I know I can actually give you a lot of examples that you have a difference between 2B and 3B. But before me answering that, I would like to understand from all of you, how many of you actually have a differences between what you see in your GSTR 2B and what you actually go ahead and claim in your GSTR 3B? So you can reply on the chat box. How many of you actually have a differences between 2B and 3B? I could see answer from Puran. Puran says yes. What about others? Do you have the differences, or you don't have any differences between what you see in 2B and what you claim in your GSTR 3B? Right. So if you ask me, right, see, if we go to the previous months and all, many of you would be like, hey, I have a differences and it's a very normal thing. And some of the reason could be there was some ITC which is appearing my 2B, but it was not allowed, or it was an ineligible ITC. So I could not claim that ITC in my GSTR 3B. Then obviously the liability or the ITC I've claimed in my 3B would be less than what is coming in my 2B. So obviously there would be a difference. Second scenario could be the case where that it was coming in 2B, my supply was compliant, but I could not claim the ITC in the same month since I have not received the goods or I have not fulfilled my other condition of section 16. So in that case, I have not claimed in that month. So that ITC was less in that month, but I would have claimed in some different month, because now I am allowed to claim the ITC since I received these goods or the services. So there you would may see the more amount too. Right? So you always see that, like, okay, no problem. Many of you would say that in the previous month, what I do, whatever was coming in 2B, I just claim it. Like, okay, there is no problem. Now you will be like, okay, anyhow, the ITC which I'm claiming is always less than what is coming in my GST at 2B. Right? Most of us was doing that. But see, one important point which we should remember over here, see, government whenever they raise the notice, one case always would be that that whenever the department looks into your 2B or GST 3B, they will raise you the notice when the amount which is coming in your GST 3B or the ITC which you have claimed in GST 3B is more than the ITC which is coming in 2B. That's a fact, right? That is why department is going to raise the notice. But the question is that the case which government is always going to follow? Answer would be no. Why? Let's understand why. See, the department have the information in your income tax thing also. The department understand that what was your capital assets being purchased, what was an ITC which was claimed in GST, and you give the detail of the capital assets and all. They may also know that this thing can also be used for your personal consumption and all, whether you have done the reversal or not. There can be certain purchase. The department may know that for this business, this is very normal that you purchase some ineligible ITC, which gets covered under 17 subsection 5. So looking into your vendor details, they may actually identify that these are the kinds of the vendor who may actually supply this category of goods. And looking into the nature of business, the nature of business of your particular GST as per your GST registration conflicts, and they may say that this person will definitely have some purchases under 17.5. And if they see that, then even when you're claiming the ITC which is less than coming in the 2B, they may come up and issue you the notice, because they may notice that you had also claimed certain ITC on the ineligible ITC. So whenever they see that you have claimed some ITC on the ineligible ITC, again they will raise the notice to you. So these are certain scenarios you should always keep in your mind, and that was the main reason why they have come up with the change in the GSTR 3B form itself. So when we look into now, let's go back to the August 2022 return period. So in August 2022 return period, the government have come up with a very big change. Though when we look into GSTR 3B form, it's a very small thing. We're like, okay, they have just added some few lines and all, right? In the table number, when we look into 4B2, right, so in 4B2 they have written some line. In 4B1 they have added something called 17 subsection 5. They introduced 4D1 4D2 in GST 3B. So when we look into the form, it looks very simple that okay, there were some lines introduced, it's okay, I don't have to worry about that. But when you see the implication of that particular thing, it's a really very big change. It's not very simple thing, it's a very big change. Because now what department is trying to do, and when the department will actually issue you the notice, is that if you see the value which is coming in table number 4A5 of GSTR 3B, the amount which is coming in table number 4A5 of GSTR 3B does not match with the eligible amount which is coming in your GSTR 2B, right? We look into the 4A5 of GSTR 3B and we see the eligible amount which is coming in my GSTR 2B, then the department will raise the notice, except for one more scenario. So here I gave you one example that okay, you actually have claimed the ITC in the next month, because in the previous month you cannot claim ITC since you have not received the goods and the services. So in such case, what department is asking you to do is that report that information in table number 4A5 of GSTR 3B, because it is appearing in my 2B. So if any document is coming in 2B but you are not allowed to claim the ITC in the same month, report that value in 4A5 of GSTR 3B and also do a temporary reversal in 4B2. Show in 4A5, do a temporary reversal in 4B2, and in the next month, whenever you receive the invoice and you are allowed to claim the ITC, report that value in 4A5 and also show the information in 4D1. This is how the reporting of this transaction has been changed, and this is how exactly I have to report in my GSTR 3B. So when I am doing this, so the value which is coming in 4A5 should always be equal to the value which is coming in eligible ITC of my 2B plus the value which is coming in 4D1, right? If that is matching, there is no problem, you are good to go, you're not going to get any notice. But if that is not matching, definitely department will issue you the notice. And if you have the proper reasoning for the same, you should actually have a proper documentation handy, so that whenever department comes in, you're not going to get time to do all that calculation again, because you won't even remember that what I had done while I was filing my GSTR 3B, right? So it's always good that while you're filing your GSTR 3B, you have a document level detail of whatever the ITC you're claiming and showing in different table of GSTR 3B also, because that is also one important part. And we have recently actually seen, practically if you ask me, right, we have recently seen that many of the taxpayers have started receiving the notices where the department say the value which is coming in 4A5 plus 4D1 is not matching the value with what is coming in my 2B, the invoices and the debit note section, right? Invoices, debit note, 2B value is not matching with what is coming in 4A5. So practically also department have started raising the notices. The best way of avoiding it, do the calculation properly as per the notification which was issued in August for the August month. And if still you are getting the notice, you should have a proper documentation for the same. So this was like another important part, when you will definitely get a notice, but you should be ready for the same. The other than these reasons, right? So this is like every month, because you're doing this activity every month, you may always see that where if you're not reported as per the law, right, as per the recent changes which has been done, then you will get a notice. Now other reason, if you ask me, right, I will tell you one query which I keep on getting. Many times when we look into GSTN 9, especially for FY 21-22, because we have recently filed our GSTN 9 for FY 21-22, you would have noticed that there was a table 17 which talks about outward HSN summary. Now, when I talk about table number 17, which talks about your outward HSN summary, you would have realized that the department was asking for HSN summary, which is mandatory in nature. I cannot go ahead without filing that table itself. And there also the department a lot of validations. When I'm saying validations, like negative rows was not allowed. Let's say if you have some negative quantity or negative taxable value or negative IGST, CGST, HGST cess, it was not allowed. The HSN code, if your turnover was more than 5 crore, then at least you should mention the 6-digit HSN code, right? Again, there was a validation of taxable value into tax rate should exactly equal to your tax amount. If that's not the case, then again, you will not be able to upload all this. So here, because of this validations and all, most of the people were like facing a lot of issues. They're like, I'm not able to prepare basis my file G1, because when I had filed my GST1 for the month of April 2022, the rate of tax column was itself not there. So I have never uploaded that information to the government, so I had certain discrepancy. Or many times maybe I have collected some extra amount from the department, from the customer, so I paid extra to the government also, and accordingly obviously the value was more, so it was not exactly matching. The taxable value into tax rate was not exactly matching with the tax amount. So this was some of the things which we would have seen while we were filing like a GST1. And due to this, most of the people, what they have done, either they have ignored that negative thing, like leave that negative thing. It is not matching, just make it match, right? Either do the differences in the taxable value or adjustment in the taxable value, or do the adjustment in the tax amount and all. See, now coming back to the point of notice, the one important point which we should again keep in our mind is, it's okay if there is a difference of 2 3 rupees, 10 rupees, 20 rupees, or 100 rupees, depending on the business to business, because it also depends on my turnover. But if the value which you have shown in table number 5N of GSTR 9, when you ask me what is table number 5N, this is nothing but your turnover, which is taxable plus exempt turnover. If the value which is reported in table number 5N plus 10 minus 11, turnover, when I'm saying turnover, obviously the taxable value over there, reported in 5N plus 10 minus 11 is not equal to the outward summary, the taxable value which you have shown. Similarly, the IGST, CGST, HGST, and cess value does not match with the outward HSN summary you have reported. You will definitely receive a notice over there. Wherever the department sees that the summary, the value as per the summary, HSN summary, and the value as per the turnover which you have declared, there's a discrepancies over there. That would be the another reason when the department is going to actually issue the notice. So you have to make sure now itself you would know what mistakes you have done, what are the right thing you have done, because maybe there were some negative adjustments, you ignored it, and all of this thing we would have done it. If we have already filed and you see that there was a discrepancy, better you make a proper documentation, proper reasoning, because this is right now, it is fresh in our mind. We know what happened, right? But think about if I'm going to get this notice after 2 years, which I can always get. I won't even remember that what I had actually filed in my GSTR 9. It's very difficult for me to even remember that what happened 2 years back, right? So it's always good that if that is happening, make a documentation right now itself, so that even if you receive the notice after maybe 2 years, 3 years, you will be in a condition to reply them that yes, I know there's a discrepancy. This was the reason for the discrepancy, and this I have the proper books of accounts with me, proper documentation, proper invoices, and this is my correct turnover also. So this is the best way of replying, making sure you have a proper documentation. Similarly, I keep on saying that there are chances. Now the next reason why the department will raise the notice. Many times I again have noticed that e-invoicing was applicable to us. We all understand that when we actually generate the IRA number, right? We all know that the e-invoicing is applicable in respect of the B2B documents, the corresponding credit debit note, and the export documents. Right? For this, we have to generate the invoicing. For the B2C document or the bill of supply, don't generate the invoice. But many times, what happens that I had generated the invoice, no problem, well and good. people just say that okay, I generated the iron number, and many people obviously do, or the many taxpayers do this activity on a daily basis. Ideal thing is, yes, you should do on a real time basis itself, because any invoice is not a valid invoice unless it has an iron number on it, right? So you should always do that activity on the real time basis, and you should not wait for the next day or something. Because the next thing which I'm going to tell you is that you may always say we get the iron number, we also get the iron date. Many people say, okay, what if I am generating the iron number at the last date? When I'm saying last date, see, one part which we should again understand is, think about, there was an invoice dated 1st April 2022, just for example, right? When the invoice date was 1st April 2022, you generated, let's say, iron on 1st of May 2022, right? Now the one bigger problem is, you can generate it, there was no problem, this got auto populated in GST1, samne wala party, the recipient was also able to see in 2B, that person has also claimed ITC. But this actually have resulted into lot of problem over here. Now you want to say, okay, what is the problem? Like, how would even government identify what are the consequences of it? From the supplier angle, from the supplier angle, obviously government know what is the invoice date and what is the item number date. They have that report already saved in their backend. From that, they know that this person has not generated iron on time, so this invoice not was not even a valid invoice. So even if you try to generate e-way bill against the same, then there is a problem. You say, okay, it's a service, there is no problem of e-way bill. Then also there is a problem because the recipient, right, from the recipient also, we all understand that this invoice is not a valid invoice till that invoice has a iron on top of that. So if that invoice was not a valid invoice, the question comes on the recipient also, that how was he allowed to claim the ITC in the month, or while he was filing his GST 3 before the month of April itself. Because since it was not a valid invoice, one of the condition of section 16 itself was not fulfilled, so he was not allowed to claim ITC in the month of April, even if that invoice was coming and appearing in my GST 2B. So the problem comes for the recipient angle, that that department may come up and question the recipient for the eligibility of that ITC, and accordingly even charge the interest on that. So it really becomes very important that what was the iron date. This I talked from the notice angle, right? You may get notice, and you they may always ask from the recovery thing also. One part which we always miss it, like sometimes we're like, okay, I have kept on generating the iron on time, I always keep that iron on time, there was no problem. But what happens, we understand that the government, they ask for the B2C summary, then HSN summary separately and all. Most of us, what they do, government auto populate this entire iron data in the GSTR1. When the government auto populates this iron data in the GSTR1, we notice that, okay, if I have more than 500 invoice, I can't click on that, I can't open that, right? I can't open that information, the UI. I have to first download that Excel file or the JSON file, put that on the government offline utility, look into that invoices, match with my sale register, which is very tedious stuff. I'm like, I can't do that. There are a lot of things I have to do. Many times what we do, let's just delete the data which is coming on my GST1, upload all the information fresh on the government portal, and accordingly I will file my GST1. First thing which you will obviously ask, is this the right practice to do? I would say no. Why I would say no? I will always say that, see, there is an information which is already appearing in GST1, and that information also have the iron number and the iron date present. Which means when the recipient also see, he is able to see the iron number and the iron date. But when you delete this information, even when you're giving the same information to the department, there are high chances of again receiving the notice from the department, because department again maintain a report that if there was something deleted from the auto populate information, then again they will raise you the notice. So it's always good that in such case, fetch that information from the government, do the reconciliation with sale register. Only if there is some differential documents which you know that where iron was missed out, generate the iron for that document, then add that document in your GSTR1. And if you see there was some document where iron was wrongly generated, you had to cancel it, but you cannot cancel because there was a time period of 24 hours and you were not able to cancel it. And because of that, because 24 hours was left, you could not cancel it. In that case, again, the suggestion is that you raise a credit note and generate the iron against the same, rather than deleting that document in your GST1. right? So these are some of the ways or some of the reasons why you may get a notice from the department, and what exactly you should do in such cases. And please don't wait for the department to raise you the notice. Rather, you know that these are the reasons, you should be ready with all the replies that, I'm going to get the notice here, this is my reply. Here I know there's a discrepancy, correct the discrepancy itself, so that you don't get a notice at all. Right, so this was some of the things which we should keep in mind, and we should obviously, to make sure we are claiming proper ITC, there is no problem over there. Because again, the next reason or next thing could be, there's the supplier, he's not filing returns on time, I'm not able to claim my ITC. So you again have to make sure that that person, the supplier, actually uploads the document on time so that you can claim ITC. Because nowadays the department is focused on the recipient itself. So if you claim extra ITC, you are punished. Supply is making any mistake, recipient is punished. So you have to be very sure about in deciding who is your vendor. So you have to make sure your vendor is compliant, because if you're not doing that, again you're going to face a lot of problem while claiming ITC. And if you're not able to claim 18% ITC, that result into your loss. And if that result into loss, it will again impact your profitability in the business, right? So it's very important to understand about all of this thing. Other than that, that recently we have heard lot about the fake invoices, we have heard about lot of bogus invoices, right? So the again the bigger problem which comes in, like people or the department keeps on saying, hey, okay, supplier issued a invoice to a recipient saw that invoice in 2B, accordingly claim ITC, but still they say that the invoice which was issued by the supplier was fake. Now you would be wondering that, okay, tomorrow if department comes and say, okay, what was coming in your 2B was fake, how I'm going to even justify that? It's very difficult for me to justify that, because I have a proper thing, I had made a proper payment, I got a proper invoice, I received a goods, everything was there. How I'm going to justify that? So again, we have to be very sure, right? When we are deciding our vendors, you should make sure, do you have a proper payment track or not, whether the payment was done properly within 180 days or not. If not, then you have to make sure you have not claimed ITC on that document. You should make sure if it is good, whether you have a proper GRN number with you, no. So you should keep a proper GRN number also, like, hey, this is the invoice, this was the quantity, this was received here, this was a corresponding invoice. So each and every detail. And again, with the GRN, you have to make sure if it's a goods, whether e-way bill was generated or not. So here, see, we should always, though we know that for e-way bill there's a condition, right? There's a condition of 50,000 and all, but it's always better that even if it is less than that particular value, you should go ahead and ask your supplier to generate the e-way bill for the goods which is coming to you. And if that person is not generating, you yourself can generate, because we always are allowed to generate e-way bill, so that tomorrow you never face that problem. You already have created a lot of document, you know that this was the goods, this is the quantity which is being created, and proper e-way bill, everything you have, which you can always tell to the department and justify that, hey, I have proper document with me, and I have proper invoices, so I have not claimed any wrong ITC. So this is something which we should always make sure, looking into e-way bill, looking into e-invoicing, looking into IRN number, looking into 2B, the correct reporting in GST1, the correct reporting in 3B. Not only this, the another important part which we should keep in our mind is about the tax rate changes. See, why I asked this one question, now let me also talk about, today if we know in GST1, right, when we file our GST1, we have an outward HSN supply. In outward HSN supply, the department actually asks for the HSN number as well as they ask for the rate of tax. They also ask for the description, which gets auto-populated. Now, one another important point which we should understand: how would department know that you have undercharged or overcharged? See, now the another way of department know as per your registration what is your nature of business. When they know what is your nature of business, you have already reported outward HSN supply. From that, you would know what are the HSN which was quoted by you. If they feel that there is some HSN which is coming in that outward supply which does not even belong to your business at all, they may always come up and ask for the audit, which is a department audit for your business, right? That is another way of they identifying that there is an issue, and accordingly they may always ask for the GST audit. The other reason is that when they know that, okay, this HSN belongs to tax rate 12%, But when they see that in that HSN you had charged only 5%, then also there are high chances that you may get a notice, and they will ask you that okay, the code, the HSN code you have quoted, the HSN, the rate is something else, but you have quoted something different. So then also you may get a notice. So you should again make sure what is the HSN you have quoted, is it a correct HSN, whether the rate of tax corresponding to HSN is correct or not. Because again, if there is a mistake, you may get notice. So you have to be very sure about your nature of businesses, your HSN, the corresponding rate of tax, and the values which are showing and reflecting in your GST1, because that is the another way of them looking into that. Not only this, anyhow they can even identify from the e-invoicing itself, because while you're generating IRN number, you're anyhow giving the document level information to the department, and there they already have this information, so they may always do that. Now, this was some of the reasons which we talked about. And not only this, like the department, they had also issued, right, there's a, also there's an, I would say, uh, there is a proper SOP which department have issued, where they have clearly mentioned some of the reasons, right? Why the department is going to raise a notice basis, what exactly the department is going to raise a notice. So this is some of the list. Like for example, the value which is coming under the import of goods, right? The import of goods as per 2B is not matching with whatever you have shown in 3B. There's a difference over there. Then they may come up and raise a notice to you. There can be a question that liability which you have shown in 3.1D, which is in GST 3B form itself, and the corresponding ITC which you have claimed in table number 4. If there is a difference, then the department may come up and raise the notice. There can be things, the zero rated supply you have shown in GST1 and the export, the zero rated supply which you have shown in GST3B. If there is a discrepancy over there, again they may raise the notice. So there are a lot of reasons which they have defined that when exactly they are going to raise the notice. So you should make a proper checklist that are you falling in this or not. And if you're not falling, best, and in case you're falling, you should correct it now or make a proper documentation with all of you, right? So this was all about today's session. And in case you have have any query, you can just put on the chat box. I could see there's one query from Pankaj, who says what are the remedy if we fail to cancel and reject e-way bill before the time period of 24 hours, 72 hours. So Pankaj, like, see, if you fail to raise the e-way bill, right, so you're saying you fail to cancel it, you had to cancel it, there was a problem there, but you failed to do that. If that the case, right, it's always like, now again the question is like, is it like the movement of the good didn't happen and you had generated? So if that's the case, it's better that one thing is you can automatically reply that to the department itself. That's the best way. Or you can ask the recipient to reject that invoice. That's another way of doing that. Okay, so I think we are done with the queries. I could not see more queries, but still, in case you have any query, you can reply on the chat box. And hope you like the session. In case you want to have the session on different topics, I know there are a lot of topics which has been recently done. There are a lot of notification which was issued, and you would have a lot of queries over there also. Feel free to reach out to us. Our mail ID is gstsupport@cleartext.in, or you can even reach out to me at surbi@cleartext.in. So that's our mail ID. We'll happy to reply or respond over there. And if you need a sessions on different topics, feel free to also tell about the topics in which you are interested, so that we can accordingly take the sessions on the topic in which you are interested. Thank you for watching this webinar. Thank you very much.